Yeah.
Hello, and welcome to My Time, My Life with trinette.faint. On this season of my podcast, I'll be talking to a variety of people, from creative entrepreneurs to business owners to writers to entertainers and others, about being bold and courageous, overcoming obstacles, and taking risks, all in the name of chasing dreams and building a career. I hope their stories will inspire you on your own journey. Thanks for listening. My guest today is Richard Cartwright, a television and film photographer veteran. Richard began his career in New York in 1967, and he was a Navy photographer in Vietnam in 1968, then worked in fashion photography in Boston before moving to LA, where he would launch his long-standing career in the entertainment business as a set photographer. Richard has shot countless TV shows and films, ranging from Wedding Crashers to Scandal, How to Get Away with Murder, Grey's Anatomy to Hidalgo, and many more. He's also created iconic images of Tina Turner, Robert Downey Jr., Cate Blanchett, and many others. He's worked in the business for well over 40 years and also practices landscape, street, architecture, and still life photography. His work can be seen on his website, richardcartwrightphotography.com. Hi, Richard. How are you today?
Okay, getting over COVID, but hanging in there.
Oh, I'm glad you're getting better. We'll try to make this as painless as possible for you since you're on the
Okay.
mend. Okay, let's dive in. What first got you interested in photography, besides that woman in Central Park that you have on your bio on your website?
Well, that was my only interest. I really had no interest in photography at all. And I coming out of high school, and I had gone to college briefly. I thought I wanted to work in machine design, but that didn't pan out because of the draft and
Mm-hmm.
and all that. So as I was waiting to go on active duty, I was able to get a job at the Bank of New York, where I met Peggy and was enamored by her. And a friend of mine lent me a camera and kind of got me interested in it. And I started taking pictures of her. And then obviously I went on active duty. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought that was pretty much the end of my photography career, no matter how brief it was. Because when I got to Vietnam, I was assigned to a gunnery position. And
Mm.
and it was just, fate that they were looking for a photographer because the other one was sent home, and I forgot the reason why he was sent home. And you needed to prove that you could take pictures, so all I had was pictures of Peggy Two that I developed myself, made contact sheets, and for the Navy, that was good enough for them.
Mm.
So
Now,
I still wasn't sure that was going to lead to anywhere either because I'm still extremely naive to photography. And when I was approached by the Boston Herald when I got home,
mm-hmm.
um, I said, what would I be doing? And they told me it was like a 24-hour job, and we'll give you a police radio and do all this kind of stuff. And uh, I said, that doesn't interest me. I already lived that life. So had no interest. So I really floundered after the
Mm.
service. Fortunately, while I was going through that, there was a program called Project Transition helping us back into the world for
Yeah.
profession. So you had to find a sponsor in Boston. I was very lucky. I found a camera store called University Camera. And basically, I worked with them for free. The Navy was paying me, and I lived in the barracks in South Boston, which, as you know now, is a very hip, cool place. But in
Yeah.
1967, 1970, it was a rough neighborhood. And I changed my clothes at the USO and go to work, change back to my Navy uniform to go back to the barracks.
I
And
guess you have Peggy to thank for a lot for your career, huh?
I do. And I don't give the government much credit for a war I did not believe in, but if I didn't join the, if I didn't get into the Navy and the situation came about, I would never had transitioned into a camera store. Who knows what do you do with a gunner? When
Mm,
you transition to a gun shop, I don't know. So,
right, right.
um, like again, life in any field is, I think, 80% luck,
Yeah, I do
twenty
believe that.
percent talent.
I do believe that. Um, you said that when you returned from Vietnam, you discovered Irving Penn and Richard Avedon.
Hmm.
How did their works ultimately influence you?
Well, first by their beauty. Um, I've seen fashion magazines. I think Playboy just came out and stuff like that, and from pinups to high fashion, like these gentlemen did. I said, "This is I wonder if I could do this." So
Hmm.
it greatly interested me, but I didn't know what went into it. It's just not pick up the camera and point and shoot type of thing, and not only it's the lighting, but it's your hair, makeup, wardrobe,
Right.
locations, and all these things. So I wasn't completely deterred by that, but I wasn't really getting anywhere with it.
So is the way you ended up in Boston over New York was you were approached by the Herald, sorry, the Boston Globe, you said when you came back?
I think it was the Herald. I think it was
Was
before
it the Herald? Okay. Okay.
when there was two papers. I don't know if the Herald's there anymore, but
I think it still is, yeah. Did you ever live in New York and work in fashion photography, or did that all start up when you were in Boston?
all in Boston.
Okay.
And Boston is where I got all my breaks. And
Oh.
I try to go back to New York um, after the project transition program, but I just wasn't the same person, and it was family stuff I was dealing with. Um, but the city was also in a downturn situation, and not particularly safe. I didn't find, and I don't know, just it lost the charm of the hippie days that I remember of being there, and um, which was very sad to see that kind of change. And certain musicians and people that I admire, had passed
Mm-hmm.
on, and Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy, and I think, and John Kennedy. And I just went back to Boston. I saw it younger and more exciting, smaller, and just
Mm-hmm.
really a train ride back to New York uh, when needed,
Right,
type of
right.
thing.
How long were you ultimately in Boston before you decided to move to LA?
13 years.
Oh, wow. So a good amount of time.
Yeah. When I got into the union, again, Boston gave me my break. Um, I got my break in Boston. The market was very small, and
Mm-hmm.
the producers I worked for at that time invited me to do their next project. And they asked me if I could work as a local, and I said, yeah, I had family there, which was very hard commuting into Long Island with
Mm,
all my gear until I realized I could put it on a camera truck and then I could just travel like a civilian. It was a lot safer.
mm-hmm.
You can imagine having four cameras and tons of film on a subway station is,
Yeah, that would be challenging and definitely unsafe.
yeah.
So when you got to LA, what were some of the challenges that you faced when you were starting your career in the entertainment business? Because that's such a different world than you were living in Boston.
Yes, well, I had absolutely not much of a portfolio to begin with, a fledgling fashion uh, portfolio. And when I learned about, through another woman friend of mine, that they had still photographers on movies, but you have to get into the union, all that kind of stuff. I was able to find a low a budget John Sayles movie that some
Mm-hmm.
friends of mine were working on, and I'm trying to think the name of it. I should have wrote it down, and I can't think of the name of it. Um, well, anyway, maybe it'll come up to me later. Uh, that gave me a bit of a taste. I took stills on it, and I worked as a grip. I did craft serve. You know, you kind of do everything and anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I got a taste of it there, and I said, "Boy, I kind of like this." But I had no idea, not a clue of how to get into IHOTC, into a union,
Mm.
and and that took some doing. That has a lot of, I don't know, what can I say? It wasn't
Well,
quite legally done. It wasn't quite illegally done, but it was done.
well, I imagine after 13 Boston winters that California was a welcome change.
Absolutely, absolutely. In New York too. I mean,
Yeah.
to go back to when I finished that movie in New York, I got myself an apartment there, and I was I still had my studio in Boston, and I had bought a house with my brother in New Hampshire,
Mm-hmm.
so I had a lot of property. I couldn't be anywhere one place long enough to enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wish I still had them today, but
We all have
that's
real estate
history.
regrets. Right.
Yeah.
Um, what was I going to ask you? What did your early years in the business look like? I guess how long did it take you to get into the union and reach a level of success where you felt confident and comfortable that you knew what you were doing, that you could solidly build out a career?
I think from the John Sayles movie and me making inquiries, I had gone into convention photography. I was doing all the hotels in Boston, which I was making, very good money
Yeah.
at the time. And I forget how I met Dickie McDonough. His father or his associates had been a political clout in that town, and he got me involved with the new film commission.
Mm-hmm.
And I started doing, events and parties for them, and they invited me out to Washington, D.C., uh, not Washington, D.C., California, because of the Teamsters and the film industry were kind of button heads. They were, I don't know how, I don't like to talk. They were doing illegal things, let's just say, and they were going to make amends for these illegal acts. And at the time, I owned a camera store in one of the major hotels where I also had a car rental concession there. And
Okay.
turned out when I was asked to sit in the head of the Teamsters limousine, which raised a lot of suspicion by the new film commissioner and then the new governor, like, who's a still photographer, being requested to sit in his limo. Um, we realized that we were in business with the same car company. And I was prepared to make a deal with him if he wishes to, kind of buy me out of my interest in that. And
Mm.
and he just thought I was a cool kid. Remember, I was a kid, 21, 22, maybe 23 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "No, you keep it, kid, and you're on the next movie in Boston." At that time, I only had an application in New York for $25, which you might as well throw it out the window. But I put it in there, paid it, and boom, a movie called Parole, where I spent all my time in maximum security prisons throughout Boston and Concord, and I got all the other
Wow.
Walpole, and thinking of who helped me get into the movie business. I thought I might wind up staying in one of these places. But that, and with a great crew, they kind of showed me the ropes, how to
Mm-hmm.
buy special equipment. You just couldn't sit there by the camera with your motor drive going, you're shooting film. as they were trying to record sound and sensitive scenes and things like that. My friend Johnny Fundis, the boom man, was instrumental in introduced me to Mark Jacobson, who makes these blimps that we've used to keep your cameras quiet. And with
Mm.
you work under the boom band to get your shot in between the assistant cameraman and the camera operator. So it really gave me a chance to get some nice pictures of these actors.
Mm.
Ellen Barkin, I think, was the one of the lead actresses in it. I don't think much happened to the rest of the people in their careers from that film. And so I got through that, and that got me my second film. Then I realized I'd have to have a place in New York if I really wanted to pursue this further. And these were ABC jobs, and eventually I got a CBS job, and then a gentleman there, Francis Cavanaugh, was new to the business himself, and we just kind of hit it off, and we've stayed
Mm-hmm.
friends ever since. When I moved to California, he moved with CBS, so that gave me a leg up here in Los Angeles as to get started. And then I met Jeffrey Chernoff through a woman I was seeing at the time, Stephanie Austin, back in New York, that worked for New Line Cinema.
Mm-hmm.
And New Line Cinema was just breaking into uh, the doing theatrical films. I believe they were doing movies about ski resorts and things like that.
Okay.
They weren't in full entertainment, but Stephanie was at the forefront of that. And when I got to meet Jeffrey Chernoff, he gave me a feature that I did with him in Texas called Johnny Be Good, with Uma Thurman, Robert Downey Jr., and Anthony Michael Hall.
Mm.
And I still had my New York apartment, my Boston apartment, and my house in New Hampshire. So eventually things started. I had to give up these things because my eyes were on California after coming out here.
Yeah.
Prior to that, in December, January, and seeing palm trees, I said, "Well, how am I going to get into this union?" Because at the time, the unions were divided: New York, Midwest, and West Coast. So they're very expensive to get in. At that time, maybe a little over $5,000 a piece. So,
Oh, wow.
and getting into it on the West Coast, if I hadn't done those movies in New York, I would have met some of the people. Louis Esposito, I think his name was the first AD. He was able to get me on a movie called Loverboy with Katie Alley and it's from ER. Mick, one of
Oh,
the
oh,
first
yeah, I know that movie. Patrick Dempsey. That?
Patrick Dempsey, right,
Yeah.
right.
McDreamy.
Um,
Dr.
McDreamy,
Dreamy.
yes.
Yeah.
Him and I would have coffee at a local diner back in the day, and he's from Maine.
I
And
did
so,
not know that.
I you know, work for, work for,
Mm-hmm.
but they were able to hire me before they signed their IA contract. So there's a beautiful law called anybody who wants to be a still photographer. I highly recommend that you get on a film before they sign any union contract, particularly an IA contract for camera, which would be today local 600. So when you're hired before they sign the contract, you are Taft-Hartley into the union. And once you're Taft-Hartley, they can't get rid of you.
Mm.
And you need 600 hours to start getting into insurance. If you do a feature film, it's easy to do. I mean, because of all the overtime and
Right, right.
that you would work. And back in those days, they could work you 6 days a week. And so I got all my hours. Now I was in two unions. I over $10,000 in union cards, and I was fortunate enough through a friend of Jeffrey's to get a rent control apartment in Santa Monica, one bedroom for $400 a month,
Oh my God.
which matched my studio apartment for about the same money right behind Penn Station at the time. dicey neighborhood. I felt safe there. It was easy for me to get out to Long Island and up to Boston because it's Penn Station, so
Right. Super easy.
logistically it was pretty cool. So I thought it was, for a while there, dreamy that I could keep everything I had, but you can't own a house in New Hampshire without being there. Pipes freeze, just
Yeah.
got to be too much. I should have just burned the house down, kept the land, but I wasn't smart enough for that. So, and there wasn't any work for me in Boston anymore, so I gave up my beautiful um, 19th century photo studio up to 24-foot ceilings, north light.
Wow.
Um, it was spectacular space. That was the hardest to give up. It really broke.
Oh, goodness. So you mentioned your work with Patrick Dempsey.
Mhm.
How do you put your subjects and celebrities specifically like at ease when you're working with them to get the shot you want?
Well, you just kind of, I just try to treat them like people. If fortunately, then Patrick was nobody, so it was very easy to work with.
Mm,
When I later worked with him on ER, was a $20 million man then, so personalities do change. They don't feel they need the publicity. They
right.
feel that it's all self-already motivated. The systems are all into place, and they're concentrating more on their performance. So you go from shooting takes to only rehearsals with people like that. Ellen from that show was like that. Used to be able to shoot everything with her. And then as she got more successful and bigger following, it was became down to just rehearsals. And a lot of actors, not just these two, have in their careers have treated the still photographer that way. And in their defense, maybe they are concentrating more on their craft. But
Hmm.
when you've been playing the same doctor for 10 years, I mean, if you don't know it now, are you going to know it? I could see if it was a bigger challenge. Some of the more difficult actors also had an interest in photography. So that helped me a lot because I could talk shop with them. I could
Yeah.
turn them on to cameras and things like that. When I did Pitch Perfect 2, my director was a woman and cast of 12, all female. Rebel Wilson she was very difficult. She didn't want to be shot. She'd do a setup, but, and I had to figure out a way how to get to her. So
Mm,
I took her aside and I said, the studios will shoot me if I do this, but I have to get these pictures, Rebel. And if I make photos available to you privately through your email, maybe we can work something out. So after doing that a while, she saw, I guess she liked the pictures because everything changed.
mm,
She was very, very, very cooperative. Um, then I felt guilty that I just can't do it for one of them. So
right.
I did for all of them. I just say, personal use only, please do, no websites, no promotionals. You can't show anything before the movie's released,
Yeah.
and then still wait 5 years later, and so it's just long forgotten. But I like the best part of my job is making memories for people, whether
Mm,
it's in the movie business, whether I'm just taking a pretty picture of you, or just no matter what. I like making memories for people. That's history,
I
and
love the shot of Tina Turner that you did.
thank you.
That ugh, it's just so beautiful. Just like captures her spirit.
Yeah, and that was a commercial I
Oh,
did back in New York, and I knew she was behind the wardrobe rack, and I just said, Tina. And she just pushed her rack, big smile. I didn't have a chance to focus. I was just boom. It just worked out, and it's not the sharpest picture, but the blur in it all add to how exciting and dynamic that woman was. I
Mm.
was later went to her show at Jones Beach, and got
Mm-hmm.
more um, photographs of her performing, which I was always in awe of her. I remember seeing her with Ike in Carnegie Hall. I still have the
Wow.
album.
Wow. Those must be incredible images. So what have been some of your favorite projects, some of your favorite shows and I guess subjects that you've worked with over the
Well,
years?
Viggo Mortensen would be way up on the top of my list. I did a movie called Hidalgo.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's a Western, loosely based on a true story about half-breed American, um, goes to Arabia uh, with his pony, I guess. I don't know my horses that well. Raced against Arabian horses and won,
Mm.
which in long start. But working with him, he was also into photography, so we had a lot to talk about it. And he's 100% professional with me throughout the whole entire film. Made it easy to photograph a very handsome, very Renaissance kind of man. I just admired him so much for all the bareback, horseback riding. He spoke several languages. He's a poet.
Mm.
Like I said, photographer. I have his poetry books. I have some of his photography books still, and just an all-around amazing human being. And then Omar Sharif was co-starring, and um, I was always an Omar Sharif fan. Back with Peter O'Toole and how all those guys of that era were just, in awe. And doing drinks with Omar Sharif, in in Marrakesh or Ouazzazate, the mountains, and what have you. And him
Oh, that
telling
sounds incredible.
these fantastic stories of his love for Barbra Streisand and her love for him, and just why they're sharing it with me, I have no idea, but they did. Uh, I just brought me closer to the actor. They should share that kind of emotion with you about somebody they loved, and politics and everything else were completely against them at that time.
Mm.
And so then the locations, Eastern Sahara Desert, in a sandstorm to South Dakota to photograph the Native American part of it, or I should really say indigenous people of this country. Um, was just absolutely awesome. But I walked right into a blizzard, from a sandstorm into a blizzard. So
Oof.
it was a real challenge. Vigo also was invited to become a member of the tribe, and it was a whole half day of ceremony that, was completely private with him and the indigenous people, which I thought was just absolutely. I only witnessed. I couldn't see it, but knowing that it was happening was
Yeah.
uh, more than spectacular.
Yeah.
I just say, I mean, what an honor. I mean, wow. And even the Bedouins in Morocco were in awe of this white boy riding horses bareback on desert sands with absolutely no fear whatsoever. So I gotta. That's another thing I admire. The indigenous people of Morocco and in this country really admired the man. Just put him way up on my pedestal.
Mm.
Um, Working with Jackie Chan and Owen Wilson on Shanghai Nights was also another one of those ama- amazing moments. Uh, Jackie, a professional beyond professional, and his whole team, and they orchestrated their fight scenes like a dance number.
Yeah.
They and the choreography of this by Jackie is something to be seen. It's just amazing.
Oh, I'll bet.
Um, Owen is a quiet man, but gives it all. Very professional to work with. It's just a joy to be around. But he's a quiet man. He's not the kind of guy you're gonna have a drink with or something. For
Mm-hmm.
Jackie, on the other hand, I do not recommend drinking with Jackie Chan. He's got a hollow leg. That's,
You lose that round.
you definitely would lose that round. But and then Cate Blanchett. I mean, what a pro! Just Bandits was a movie with her, and I have a beautiful photograph I shot of her in black and white that hangs on my wall that I'm extremely proud of. Billy Bob Thornton. I've worked in him a few films. What a gentleman! He's the only actor I ever saw stick around and sign autographs for fans. I'd
Mm,
stay there until as long as he could.
wow.
He's just really what a gentleman, what a nice man. And Bruce Willis. He was a little more complicated, but all around a really good guy. Um, Very generous to the crew because you have these gambling days on Friday where you buy a card for $5 and see if you can win a couple $100. And Bruce would always throw in $400 or $500 more into the bucket. So it was a good win if you wanted, that's for sure. So that was
What
nice.
incredible stories, Richard. My goodness. This is a
Barry,
long
that was
way
it.
from your
Excuse me.
beginnings with Peggy to this whole world now.
Oh yeah, it's just and the band in this movie. But back to New York. When I asked John Furness, I don't know any real big name still photographers. So would you recommend? And he recommended Brian Hamill to me, who does all Woody Allen movies. There's a book, Woody Allen. He also is personal friends of John Lennon.
Hmm.
And I didn't know John Lennon. He had not photographed him at that time, but he was working for Woody. And I said, "Oh my God, I was nervous as hell." And John introduced me to him, an Irish kid from Brooklyn. Pete Hamill's his brother. It was just reputation. He's worked with all the biggies, and he also, here again, this is luck. He took a liking to me and put me on movies that overlapped the Woody Allen movie that he might be doing. So I did Aphrodite. I did Books Over Broadway. I think I did several of them. You only do like a month or two, but still watching Woody work, his way of working, the actors of how they work. There's a lot of takes, so it can get a little boring. But if just to be around those people and building my portfolio up. It's like who's
Yeah.
in your book gets you your next job. I owe a lot to Brian Hamill as well. It's a generous. Most still photographers are not that generous, and
Yeah.
because you're really a competition. But he never felt that way. And with Bandits, Brian had contracted cancer, and he only recommended me to take over the entire movie. And um, we've been buds ever since. We've been
Mm.
super friends ever since. So.
Well, a lot of it is luck, but you're clearly talented because if you didn't have the talent to back up to actually do the opportunity, you know, that would
Oh yeah,
probably the end of it.
yeah. That's that other 20%.
Yeah, yeah. Preparation meets opportunity, for sure. I just have a couple last questions for you, Richard.
Sure.
Tell me, what are you reading right now?
Um, let's see. What's Keith Richards' story,
Mm, that
his
must be
biography.
fascinating.
Yeah, I met the Stones in New York, not New York, Boston, um, ever so briefly. I was just shooting concerts and stuff like that, and somehow I got backstage again and got a couple pictures of that maybe before we were all, obviously asked to leave when the groupies came in, and stuff like that. So, um, yeah, so reading his stories, and, that's reading right now.
Fun, fun, fun. And my last question for you is, what piece of music inspires you?
Well, inspiration for photography has its own sounds. If I think about the war, if I think about like a movie like Battle LA, which was all war. I'd listen to the Doors a lot. I Creedence Clearwater Revival and stuff like that. Movie that music that kind of, I don't know, gives you false bravery or something. It just jump right into it. Um, if I'm doing something very arty, I'll play classical music. I'll
Mm-hmm.
soft jazz, things like that. So music and photography. There's no one music for a photographic scene. Just like in the movies, they use music to heighten the excitement, to build the drama, and what have you. So I try
Yeah.
to use music to set the tone of whatever. If I'm going to do your portrait and I know you're into jazz, I'm not going to play, hard heavy metal. I'm going to play Sinatra or
Mm-hmm.
Ellis Fitzgerald. So I use music as a tool to get to know the subject better or the project better.
Interesting. I see that. Well, Richard, this has been so great. Thank you so much for taking time to come on my podcast, and I hope you feel a lot better really soon.
Thank you. And for your viewers, I was able to meet Trinette on a movie,
Yes, way back when.
and I'm so glad I did.
Yes, that was a fun time. That was my first big movie. I got health insurance from that one.
So important.
Yep.
So important. To any young photographer out there, as you get older, you'll find that health insurance, pensions, and annuities and all that stuff become very, very important. So,
Yeah, yeah. Richard and I met on Celtic Pride, shot in Boston. I was new to Emerson. I think that was my second semester at school, and I took a semester out to work on the film. And I'm so glad I did. One of the better decisions that I've made in my life, having done that.
yeah, I'm so glad I was there. It's also the last picture taken in the Boston Garden before they wrecking ball knocked it down.
Ah, memories, memories. All right, Richard, thank you very much.
You're very
And
welcome.
thank you all for listening to another episode of My Time, My Life. And until next time, take care. Bye. My Time, My Life with trinette.faint is a Floor 51 production.